afternoon. I started doing some research on the history of Chase Bank, and it goes back to 1799 when Aaron Burr, you all know where Aaron Burr? Aaron Burr was the guy who shot Hamilton, and it's all implicated in the national bank stuff that's gone on for the last 300 years. But anyways, Aaron Burr took a company that wanted to be a water company. The Manhattan Company was going to be a water company. But they put in the corporate charter that the state of New York's legislature passed and said, we can do anything we want as long as it's profitable. And the state legislature passed that. Pretty strange. Anyway, so that's what they started with. They never hardly were a water company, they just became a bank. Because as Lily Sutton said, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. And that's what this is about. You go through this and you go through every other one of the companies that they keep absorbing and absorbing. It's some of the oldest and most criminal fortunes in the history of the United States. J.P. Morgan, he bailed out the banks so that the banks would then set up so the government would set up a central bank to bail out the banks the next time that they crashed the economy. You've got all kinds of things. Manufacturers Hanover was set up as a manufacturing company and became a bank within 6 months. Never did any manufacturing because it was a license to steal. More recently, they just keep merging with more and more banks. And all of these companies have histories of really bad stuff. You know, one of the things you have to think about is the relationship of banks to real estate. The entire American economy is built on real estate. It's the money that underpins everything. That's what happens when you steal the land from the people who live here. And that's what they've done. So, you know, George Washington, you know, back to 1799, George Washington was a land speculator. He made his fortune stealing land from the Indians. You know, it just keeps going and going and going in this society. And the banks are implicated in every bit of it. Recently, Chase had a David Rockefeller as the chair. I mean, we all know Rockefeller all made their money in Standard Oil. And so they're deeply, deeply, deeply embedded in the money, in the funding of all the fossil fuel industries. Every bit of it is funded through these banks. So we have all of that kind of problem. We have a massive problem with where the money is. And if we don't move the money away, we're really going to be in trouble. So we've got them back in real estate, we've got them in fossil fuels. One of the things that's going on is this thing called the Mount Pelerin Society. Don't remember the name, they're a bunch of criminals. They basically were the start of neoliberalism. They basically said, do away with environmental regulation, do away with civil rights protection, do away with rights for people who have gender, you know, other than white male. And basically they said, if the rich should rule, and if democracy gets in the way, get rid of democracy. So that's the thing we've got. We've got Chase funding groups like this. Most of the funding for those guys comes from the Koch brothers. You know, the same group that gives us Maniello, who says, let's cut taxes and eliminate regulations because that's good for the economy. How many of you have ever heard of the business climate? They tell us about it all the time. They're obsessed with it. You know, cut taxes, cut regulation, your economy will grow. I am going to wait for the fire truck to go by. Okay, so business climate is what they keep telling us in Rhode Island we need a better one. There's one problem with that. There's absolutely no evidence that a business climate has one bit to do with your rate of growth. So you've got the same people who lie about the real climate, lying about the business climate. So that is what we've got. We've got the same people, the owners of this bank, the owners of a lot of the other banks, the owners of big corporations, The politicians have all been bought. You're all saying, don't worry about the real climate, worry about the business climate. But we have to start worrying about the real climate. I saw another study today. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time. Another study today that says if we keep building fossil fuel infrastructure, we have no chance to make it. If we stop building new stuff today, we got about a 2/3 chance to keep it under 1.5 degrees. So this is what we need to do. We need to tell the clowns who are telling us to worry about the business climate to show us their data, because they don't have any and they won't show it. You ask the economists, you ask the Providence Journal, they never show you any data that says a business climate actually is good for you. It doesn't actually change your growth rate. And of course, then we really have another study that came out today that said if we are thinking about future growth, and we shouldn't be because it's going to be dead, you know, if we are thinking about future growth, then if you have more fossil fuels in the air and more storms and more disasters, the UN said there's a disaster every week on average now. Billions and billions of dollars lost, people moving, farms failing, crops failing, people on the run from climate change. So every week there's a new disaster from climate, and they're telling us that this is going to be good for the economy. It's time for us to start to think about this really differently. We have to start thinking that we need a sustainable economy, an economy based on communities rather than corporations. It's hot out here. I'm starting to time. I'm holding this thing up as hard. Anyways, so we have to start to do this really differently. It is time to stop the fossil fuel industry in its tracks. We have to stop them now, shut them down, tell them no new stuff, and everything else is getting phased out. Think about it. If they build a power plant that's lasting for 40 years, how many people think that they will shut it down after 5 when we realize we have to shut it down? They're going to be screaming, stranded assets, let's pay for it. They charge them more. That's all they do is they say, how can we steal more? So that is what is going on. That is what this bank is about. I would like all of you to, of course, not bank with Chase, but maybe we ought to stop thinking about how we start to understand the economy of real estate and inequality and toxic fuels and inequality. It is time for not only climate change to be shut down, it is time for real climate justice. Thank you.